Hello guys, it is me again, it's HorrorFan34, and welcome back to another random video. I figured I'd do another Blu-ray review for you guys. I haven't done one in quite a while. I think the last Blu-ray I reviewed was, Manhunter, which was from Scream Factory. And I picked this up a few days ago, and I figured since I watched both cuts of the movie, I wanted to give my review of not of the movie itself, because I want to. I'll just say right now, it's going to be on this, the Exorcist 3 Blu-ray collector's edition from Scream Factory. Now, of course, it didn't have the slipcover with it, but you know what? It's still the film on Blu-ray from Scream Factory with the features and things like that. So I'm fine with not having the slipcover. I mean, slipcovers are nice, but it's still the film from Scream Factory on Blu-ray, and the features are on the back. So it has the reversible artwork and things like that. So, but I figured this is not going to be a review of the film itself, because I want to wait till I review the Exorcist films altogether. But just to give a quick nutshell of what I think of the movie itself, I love the film. I think it's an underrated sequel. I think it's one of the most underrated horror sequels ever. I love the Exorcist 3, directed by William Peter Blatty, who is no longer with us anymore. But I love the atmosphere, I love the cast, I love the musical score, and things like that. So that's really my review of the film in a couple words here and there. So, but this is strictly going to be about the Blu-ray itself. Now, I said both cuts because this collector's edition from Scream Factory comes with two cuts of the film, which are right here. You have the theatrical cut, and you have the director's cut, which is just titled Legion, because basically the story behind, and I'll get to the features. I'll go through the features really quickly, then I'll get to some of the backstory. But Disc 1, which is the theatrical cut, has a brand new 2K scan, a vintage featurette, a photo gallery, trailer, TV spots, deleted alternate scenes, alternate takes, bloopers, and it has 40 minutes worth of vintage interviews from back in the day with William Peter Blatty, Jason Miller, George C. Scott, Ed Flanders, and other actors as well. Which is that's pretty cool. The 40 minutes of vintage interviews, especially with Jason Miller and things like that, is really worth checking out for the features. So that's a good feature to have. And Disc 2 is the director's cut, Legion, which has an audio interview with William Peter Blatty, really informative audio interview, because I watched through some of the features. You have interviews with the producers. You have a brand new interview with Brad Dourif, who plays the Gemini Killer. You have a new interview with the production designer, a new interview with the composer, and a featurette on the special effects. So, loaded with a lot of features. So, now the features are really good on this. But diving into my main review for this is to go over both cuts, both the Blu-ray, both Blu-rays, the theatrical cut and the director's cut, because basically. Now, I don't know if anybody knows the backstory, and if you already know, then, I'll basically be explaining that. But for people who don't know, want to have a little bit of a, want to learn some info, then this is the video for you. So, basically what happened was, when the film, William Friedkin and William Peter Blatty wanted to do an Exorcist sequel, the true sequel to the original, for quite a while, after Exorcist 2 was a piece of crap, but over time William Friedkin lost interest and it dropped out. And then I know William Peter Blatty at one point wanted John Carpenter to direct this. I figured John Carpenter doing this film, that would have been very interesting. It really would have. But if you read up about what Carpenter said, I think Carpenter even admitted that it really did seem like William Peter Blatty wanted to direct it himself, which ultimately was the case, so Carpenter backed away from it, and William Peter Blatty directed it. And basically what happened was the film was done, And the studio went in and they looked at it and they were like, well, can he have an exorcism scene in it? But the thing is, William Peter Blatty, this was based on his novel Legion that he wrote, the novel. And the thing is, sorry about that, but in his novel Legion, there was no exorcism scene. So the original director's cut, which is on the second disc, is more like the best they could, like finding the footage they could have found, because I know most of the footage was lost. So the director's cut is more of William Peter Blatty's direction, in a way. I'll get to that in a minute, but basically, you know, the studio went in, they were like, well, can he have an exorcism scene? The ending's a little bit limp, a little bit bled, because in the director's cut, George C. Scott just goes up and shoots him, and then the movie ends. And then compared to the theatrical cut, which is the exorcism scene. So, now, originally, when William Peter Blatty directed this film, which you see right here on the back, Brad Dourif, can't really see that, but there you go, right there. Brad Dourif. When William Peter Blatty directed the original director's cut, which you see, which is on the second disc, the director's cut, Legion, Brad Dourif was in all the scenes with him and George C. Scott. There was no Jason Miller whatsoever. There was no Jason Miller, because Jason Miller played, of course, Father Karras in the original film. So when they, unfortunately around this time, Jason Miller, who's unfortunately passed away now, but around this time, Jason Miller was an alcoholic, and there was like a certain term they use where they can't, like, when actors can't remember dialogue, so they said, well, you figure Jason Miller can't do it, so let's get Brad Dourif to do it, because in the Legion cut, Brad Dourif played the character of Damien Karras, who was the character from the original. So, in the director's cut, the Legion cut, it was all Brad Dourif playing Damien Karras. There was no Jason Miller. So there was, you know, it was all Brad Dourif. But what happened was, the studio went in and they were like, well, the ending's a little limp. We want a little bit more punch to the ending. We want Jason Miller to have more of a connection to the first film and things like that. So what ended up happening is that basically, like, if you own this, like, on DVD or Blu-ray, like, the theatrical cut that you see, like, the one that came to DVD and things like that, basically, if you watch that cut where Brad Dourif is the Gemini killer, Brad Dourif, that's, like, when he's young, like, when George C. Scott goes, you know, the Gemini is dead, and you hear Brad Dourif go, no, I'm not! Look at me! Like, when he's screaming like that, that was all the stuff that Brad Dourif had to redo. He redid everything, because what happened was, when they went back in to film the exorcism scene, they had to build a new set, because they had to get Jason Miller in there and the exorcism scene. So basically, Brad Dourif had to redo his entire performance because it was a brand new set, and Jason Miller being in there too. So now Brad Dourif was the Gemini killer, and Jason Miller was the Patient X, you know, Father Karras character from the original. So basically, you know, there's, when George C. Scott's talking, you know, there's Jason Miller, and then there's Brad Dourif. Like the audience, like us as the audience, we're seeing, you know, Brad Dourif. George C. Scott is looking at, when we're looking at Brad Dourif as the Gemini killer, George C. Scott is looking at Jason Miller, which is how it is in the theatrical cut. And I'll tell you, you know, after watching both cuts, because I watched both cuts, and the Legion cut was interesting to watch. It was an interesting cut to watch. You know, it was, you know, seeing what originally Brad Dourif did when he played Damien Karras. You know, the performance in the Legion cut, you know, was more laid back and more just talking, more softly, more soft spoken, and things like that. I mean, you know, not to say Brad Dourif did a bad job in the Legion cut, because I know Brad Dourif prefers the Legion cut, which he says on the interview, on the features. I know a lot of people prefer the director's cut, but in my humble opinion, I prefer the theatrical cut. I really do prefer the theatrical cut because when I did watch the director's cut, the ending is limp. It really is a really anticlimactic ending. I can see why the studio would go in there and they'd be like, can we add a little bit more intensity to this ending? Hence, that's why in the theatrical cut, the one that was released in theaters, that was the exorcism scene, and Jason Miller was in there and things like that. So that's really the whole story behind that. And then, compared to like the director's cut and the theatrical cut had the bells and whistles of the exorcism scene and things like that. I much prefer that. It's just such more of an exciting ending than just the... It was interesting, that, like I said, to watch the Legion cut, but I think the theatrical cut was a far better cut, because I like the fact that when Jason Miller wasn't originally going to be in the movie, and then when they had to reshoot with a new set and Brad Dourif had to redo everything as the Gemini Killer, and they brought back Jason Miller to play the Father Karras character, the Patient X character, I like that, because it was cool to see Jason Miller and Brad Dourif in the same movie, because I like both actors. I like Jason Miller and I like Brad Dourif. I think George C. Scott was good in there too, so I'm glad they decided to put Jason Miller in this to have more of a connection to the first film. So, the theatrical cut, in my opinion, is the best cut, in my opinion, but it's still cool to own the director's cut, but it was kind of more of a curiosity piece for me, just to see like what William Peter Blatty originally envisioned, because I know the theatrical cut was more about the studio changing stuff that William Peter Blatty had to do. But the Legion cut was not to say that the Legion cut was bad or anything. I mean, the ending was a little limp and all that stuff. I mean, Brad Dourif wasn't bad as the Damien Karras character in the Legion cut, but I think Brad Dourif's performance was better in the theatrical cut, like when he's the Gemini Killer. It's more aggressive and angry and things like that. And I like seeing Jason Miller in there too. So I'm glad that they got Jason Miller to be in the film, even though he originally wasn't going to be in the movie. So overall, this is a really good Blu-ray from Scream Factory. Has both cuts of the movie, whichever you prefer. Has 40 minutes worth of vintage interviews, deleted scenes and bloopers, an interview with Brad Dourif on the production team, on the special effects, and of course, has reversible artwork, because the original artwork was, Brad Dourif as the Gemini Killer and George C. Scott, but of course I flipped it because it was the theatrical poster. But I say it's a really solid addition from Scream Factory, but that's my review of the Blu-ray of The Exorcist 3. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Alright guys, take care.